Okay, I think we're live here. I just want to give you some pointers on this source analysis project. Since I don't have you in the classroom, we haven't been able to talk about this. And of course, if you are in one of my classes, then maybe you have, but you want to review some of these points. So here we go. The first thing you should do is read the directions, because all the directions are there and you really can figure out what I'm asking you to do if you read the directions carefully and you go through them. Here is a summary of the directions. Find a topic in the textbook that you want to explore more fully. This should be something that you're interested in. It maybe there's something that's just barely mentioned in the textbook, but you want to know more about it. Or it's something you've always heard about or wondered about, or what have you, and you want to explore it a little bit more. So give yourself the chance to do something you want to do and to find out something you want to do, and let your intellectual curiosity take you through this project. Format your assignment by numbering each answer according to the questions I've given. This isn't an essay that you will end up writing. This is the preliminary to an essay that you would write if I was going to make you, but I'm not going to make you. This would be like a sliver of the research process that you would go through for a larger research project. Again, which you're not going to do, but that's the idea here. So you don't need to write this out like an essay. You can go number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. Make sure that you have 3 sources that have both primary and secondary sources. I'll talk about those in a second. I would prefer 2 primary sources and 1 secondary. That's what I'm asking for. I've had people do 2 secondary and 1 primary. It would be better if you have a minimum of 2 primary sources. I mean, really, if you were going to do a research project, you'd want like 10 primary sources and 10 secondary sources. So this is a very minimal approach. And I'm looking for you to find a couple documents from the time period and then an essay that's a secondary source where a contemporary scholar or expert of some kind has written an article about your topic. Make sure that you include a citation for each of your sources, as well as a web link. If you get the document from the internet, you can provide the web link. If you get it from ProQuest in our library database, the URL, the link, isn't going to be any good. You need to actually just get the full citation, and for everything you need to get a citation. I'm going to give you a website in a couple minutes that's going to help you with citations if you don't know about this website. It's called EasyBib.com, and it's a great and free resource. Make sure that you thoroughly analyze each document. That's what we're trying to do here. The goals of the assignment are for you to be able to formulate a good question about a topic. I just want to see that you can come up with a topic and ask a good, reasonable question about it. And again, not a question that's going to yield just a factual answer, like who won the Civil War, and that can just be answered. Who was the 16th president, or whatever. But a question that asks something that's more compelling. What was the Civil War fought over? Remember that example that we gave from an earlier assignment. Something that has a little more potential controversy, or that's a little more interesting, that's something that's arguable, and so forth. Okay? So also for you to be able to find some good legitimate sources that help you to answer that question. That's the other part of this. I want to see that you can find some sources that are not weird sources. They're good, accurate, credible historical sources. So you're going to have to figure that out. I'm going to give you some pointers here in a little bit. I would recommend that you stay away from a lot of the .com sites because those sites by definition are engaged in commerce, not in the pure objective dispensation of knowledge. For you to be able to analyze those sources so as to come to a conclusion, you should recognize that the source isn't going to contain the answer, right? The source is going to have some information from which you are going to try to cobble together an answer through a process of analysis and interpretation. So we're not looking for sources that are going to, there's going to be a smoking gun. Here it is. Here's the answer, right? You're not going to find that. You have to interpret these documents. And finally, for you to be able to formulate a good thesis based upon this preliminary research that you've done. Writing a good thesis is important. We've done this before. Remember, the thesis has to be something that is arguable, and it is an answer to a historical question. Okay, some tips for choosing good sources. Primary documents are documents that are from the time period. A newspaper from the time period is a primary document. If you're doing it on World War II or the Great Depression, a newspaper article from the 1930s or 40s, that is a primary document. A government publication, a political speech, a diary, anything that comes from the historical period in which you're studying, that is a primary document. These are the basic rudiments of what we call history. Historians take primary documents and they analyze them and interpret them and try to figure out what happened. The primary document today can be anything, any kind of information. Court records, novels from the time period, editorial cartoons, paintings, so many things can be primary documents. Secondary documents are documents that are written today or more contemporaneous. They could be written in the last 30 years. Let's say you're looking at the 1940s or the 1930s. As long as they weren't written in the 30s and 40s, maybe they were written in the 60s, 70s, 80s, all the way up till present, those can be secondary. That means that some kind of expert, is taking the information and putting it together and interpreting it, taking the primary documents and interpreting it. A textbook is a secondary document. A textbook is a secondary source. But I'm going to tell you, for the purposes of this project, you can't use a textbook as your secondary document. I want you to find some kind of article written by an expert on the topic that you're looking at. I don't want you to use an encyclopedia as your secondary document. Now, both of these sources are really good sources for gaining background information on your topic. So I'm not telling you not to use these things. I'm telling you that you can't cite it as your secondary document. Okay? You can use them as much as you want. I would use them a lot. I mean, you can use encyclopedias. You could go onto Wikipedia to get some background information, or go onto the Oxford Reference to, Dictionary of American History, or your textbook, get the background information, but you can't use it as your secondary document. You also can't use a general informational website that doesn't have an author. Okay, I'll show you that here in a minute. We'll go onto the web and I'll show you what I mean by that. But if you've got a website, if you've just typed something in, the Civil War, and you just end up at a website that's just got a bunch of information about the Civil War, that is not a sufficient secondary document. It may have been in middle school, it may have been in high school. It's not in college, and it's not in this class, at least. Maybe other professors want to allow you to use that. For this purposes of this assignment, you have to have an authored article of some sort. If it comes from a website, that's fine. So choosing good sources. I would recommend that you go to use CBC Library resources first. In fact, visit the CBC Library and ask a reference librarian. They can help you out. Or you can go use the online databases. That's what most students do. And you'll find a lot of good material there. And I'll show you in a minute. The ProQuest History Study Center is an excellent resource. For general websites, look to edu, org, and gov for sources. Primarily stay away from .com. That's not always true. There are many exceptions to that rule, but again, repeating what I've said before, you're more inclined to get good information from some of these other sources. .orgs, for instance, if you go to a museum website, there's going to be good information there. Or the .edu, college and universities. The .gov, you can go to the Smithsonian website or the Library of Congress. Great information there. Cite your sources. I need full bibliographical details for each document. Great website in which to get your format for citing is easybib.com. It's a great website. My son, who's 13 in 8th grade, he uses it for papers that he writes at Chief Joe Middle School. And it's really a good resource. You can just plug in the information that you know. You can even copy in a URL, and then the website takes you through it, and it generates a bibliographical entry. And it's really a pretty good source. And finally, have fun, because you do get to learn something about something that I would hope that you're interested in. Okay, all that being said, let's very quickly go to our website. Let's see here. So this may or may not be the website for your class, but if you're doing this assignment, somewhere among your modules is a module for the Critical Thinking Source Analysis project. By the way, you should know that you can drop down these modules once you're done with them, right? Just by clicking that arrow, you can hide those, so you can clean up the view that you have and just have open the module that you're working on. So here's the source analysis project. Of course, this is where you find the assignment. It's where you read the specific directions. There are the directions. Here's the rubric by which I grade you, the scoring sheet by which I grade you, and you see that you can do a text entry or submit as a file type. The next source I want to show you is the ProQuest History Study Center. It's the next link. Are you sure? Okay, continue. I don't know what this is doing. Anyway. Oh, and here it is. It came right up. If you're doing this from home, you're going to have to log in to the ProQuest History Study Center. And by the way, if you click this link right here, it'll take you outside of Canvas. So you can click that link and it will redirect you outside of Canvas and you end up here. I just wanted to show you this website really quickly because I think it's really, really useful, because it separates primary from secondary documents for you, and it also separates things by subject matter. The best way, I think, to go into it is not to just do a catch-all search, although that works too. There's a couple different things you can do. One thing is to go into the study units. If you click on study units, you go into American history, you then narrow it down by chronology, so let's say 1945 to present. And these are all study units. Contained within them are primary documents, secondary documents, reference materials. And you can scan through here to see if there's anything that you're interested in here. Maybe you're interested in the rise of the feminist movement. Maybe you're interested in suffrage movement or other things about women in America. There's two modules here. One's more about feminism, one is more about just women in America. So let's go into the feminist unit, and maybe you have a question about feminism. Why did the feminist movement arise in the 60s and 70s, or what were they trying to accomplish, or whatever it is. Maybe you want to just figure out what it is. What you can see is there's a bunch of reference materials. Remember, you can use them but not as your secondary document. There's some primary documents up here, and some biographies, some maps. A map can be a primary document or a secondary document, depending on what it is. So here are some primary sources, and you can see these are sources that come from the time period, and various time periods throughout time, and so these are primary documents. Elizabeth Cady Stanton, right up through Betty Friedan, an important persona in the rise of the modern feminist movement. You have a couple documents for this 1945 to present class. If you're in that class, I've posted a couple documents on feminism. You could go back and use those. The Gloria Steinem, the Phyllis Schlafly document. Here's some journal articles. These would be secondary documents. You can see they're written 2008, 2010, and these are secondary documents. The Mystique of Betty Friedan, written 1999. There you go. So you can, Feminism and Republicanism, American Motherhood, written 1984, still a secondary document. Okay? So that's one way. The other way is to just, scan. So you're interested in the Manhattan Project, just do a search on it, go, and you're going to come up with a bunch of stuff. Wait, we're still waiting. Okay, so it's going to give you study units, historical documents, maps and references, journals. So here's the study units where you can go into American foreign policy or the nuclear age to learn something about the Manhattan Project. So you could pick those, or you could scroll right down here and see there's a bunch of historical documents. Okay, you can click here and you'll get more results. You get a whole bunch of results maybe. You go back to the previous page to get back to your page. Here's multimedia, here's journals. 606 results for journals. So there's a lot of different articles. Barton Bernstein, that's a good. Racing for the Bomb, Leslie Groves, The Manhattan Project. The Manhattan Project's Indispensable Man. That may be a book review, I'm not really sure. But in any case, there's a lot of material here that you could find. Okay, so let's say you just go out, you're not finding anything on this study site. Well, actually, first, let's go back to our website and see that I've got some other links for you. There's the Library of Congress, American Memory Project. Click on this link to get outside of Canvas. There's the We the People, which has government documents. Again, click up on this link to get outside of the Canvas frame. And 100 milestone documents, those are all primary documents. There's more history resources from our CBC library. There's all kinds of resources here. Let's say you're just out on the Google, okay, and you Google something in like Manhattan Project, okay, and you could go to Wikipedia. Of course, you're not going to use that as a secondary source. You can only use that for general background information. One thing you might want to do, though, is scroll down to the bottom of the Wikipedia entry. I mean, you can read it, too. It might be good. Maybe you'll find some good resources in the bibliography or the footnotes here. And maybe you can click on these footnotes as it goes through the article, and you can find out where that's coming from. And maybe if you're interested in something that's in the article, click on the footnote that comes at the end of the section you're interested in. You're going to maybe find something. Let's go back to our Manhattan Project Google search. So here's a Britannica. Again, that's not going to be anything but background reference. Here is some kind of little article about the Manhattan Project. It's maybe highly informational, but it is not a sufficient secondary source. There is no author here that I can see. This is just a website that may be offering some really nice information, but at this point it's background information. Okay, and the same it looks like with this site here. Probably just general information website. Yeah, so there's nothing here really that you're going to get except background information. So anyway, this is just trying to give you a sense of what I'm looking for you to find, and if you have questions about the sources that you're finding, you can certainly email me and let me know if you have questions, and I'll be happy to answer those questions. Okay then, that's good enough for now. Good luck with your source analysis project, and good luck finishing up the quarter, and we'll talk to you soon.